Well, hello there, everybody. Jamming out a little 10 years after. Man, I'll tell you what. Woo! Looking back on one's life, I can tell you that was a hell of a concert. Saw them at Hoffhein's Pavilion there on the University of Houston campus. Farewell concert. Saw it with my good friend at the time, David Myers. Yeah. Hmm. Anyway, welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in on this is just my being able to look back in on my life. Um, 25,000 days is significant for any of us. Well, fact is, when you turn 68 and a half, you'll have your 25th thousand day. And it is one of those defining points. If you look back 200 years ago, the thought of a person living 25,000 days was a near impossibility. Didn't happen. And the fact that today we can enjoy such a milestone, and it's a, um, for all of us, for you. You ought to put a montage together. I'm going to share one with everyone today of my life, but you should do a montage of yourself. It's exciting because you get to see that you've lived every day you're alive. It's a new day. It's a new you. Oh, whoo, that is some hot. Ooh, that is some hot tea. By the way, speaking favor over us all, nothing missing, nothing broken. Thought I forgot that, huh? It's like a seed being planted every day. But the point is, um, we age every day. And we don't perceive it. But yet, you look back and you can see how you change year to year. Well, it just makes sense that you're going to get all the way down there to day by day. Holy crap. That's good, but whoa. And the pepper. Mm, yeah. By the way, cheers. Whatever and wherever you are, um, share a favorite beverage, libation, and savor. It's one of the great things about being in these bodies. I'm not sure how the spirit works. You know, I don't know how you could feel pain in the spirit world, but apparently you can. Apparently they can have sex. Okay, next. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Hello everyone in the chat room. John Price, how you doing? JC, good to see you. Chloe, much love to you, darling. Got your email. Thank you. Jeanette, hello. Rick, good to see you. Lori, Linda Espinoza. She says, I'm closing in on 23,000. Yeah, yeah. And then just, get back and just do this. Hey, Nina, how are you doing? The way the world is going, I don't think I will make 25. Well, Nina, I'm going to speak favor and say, if that's what you want, we're going to get it 25,000 plus. Hey, skies above, how are you? Thank you, Sabrina. Lost in space, Cecilia. So it's not, yeah. Jackie, how are you, my darling? John, go from all the way from Croatia. So, that's interesting. I was reading Chloe's comment in there. Um, yeah. So it's cool because the thing about when you begin to look at yourself on a daily basis, I think it helps you in the ability to live more in the now. And then it's really a far out thing when you get to look at yourself over the decades. The generations today, their lives are told in the moments of their selfies. And it's interesting because I can kind of dig it. You're going to have a record of you every day. Hmm. A bit of a sore throat, so that's helping a lot. So I didn't have cameras back when I was growing up. We had them. And Polaroids, you know, we were poor. And you'll see that. You didn't have, I think my dad may have had a Polaroid, must have. Somehow some of these pictures survived. But it's an interesting thing too, is because you're frozen in that moment. Whatever that moment was, that picture was taken. And for me, it allows me to look back and go, wow, very interesting. I was born in 1955. That world does not exist today. Many of the buildings that were around back then don't exist anymore. The culture does not exist anymore. Um, dare I say that the society itself no longer exists anymore. We, the baby boomers, are but now a remnant of the memory of that time. Interesting thing about the year 1955. Um, it is, and it's been proven to this in economics, politics. 1955 was the peak of America's prowess. You had rapid expansion of the middle class, rapid expansion of new wealth. Technology was beginning to integrate. We had just come out of a war, so the coaling had taken place. Many of the males were taken out of the equation, in which allowed room for the new ones to take over. These generation of young men and women that went through World War II, to have survived it on the other end, it forever changed. And then you have this glorious period. It probably started in earnest in near the end of World War II. There was enormous factories built, and unemployment didn't exist. The males that were being culled in the wars, the women had to come in. You know, still see the pictures of who was the picture that had the wrench in her hand? Someone in here will know it. Um, so, hey, Street Mom, how you doing, Susie Q? Good to see you. Boots on the ground. So, it was a time unlike it was unparalleled prosperity. And again, technology was coming in because we harvest all this technology from the war, and now is being integrated into the private civilian sector. So if you were going to come in as a spirit or a soul, well, that would probably have been one of the more ideal times. Because after that, particularly um, 57, 58, things began to shift. We began to see that in the early 60s through the change in politics. Um, there was more the beginnings of a more liberal way of thinking of things, other than the very strict morals that were primarily dictated by the dominant religion, Christianity. And the country was about to face an upheaval. But I saw all that, have pictures of it. The 60s brought the civil rights to the forefront. You suddenly began to have a better understanding of the tabooness that was always new but never spoken of coming out. Um, I doubt it, if we saw today what those riots were in the early 60s leading into the mid 60s, well, I don't know. I don't know if we could withstand it as a society, but we did. Um, People had coming together. And then you had this. counter revolution culture coming in. And it was brought forth on the wings of rock and roll. The youth became more rebellious against the dictates that were being imposed upon them of a generation that was passing. And I got to ride that wave. Many of you of the same age, and you wrote it as well. I'm sure it helped define your life. You know, I love playing music in the chat room before we get in here because why? That's the most powerful magic there is, ain't it, Gilbert? You know. And so you think about this, and all the while things were changing in this world. I think one of the advantages that you have where you continue to live more days on this earth than others, and particularly if you have the awareness to look within, you can really see a fantastic picture that I was a part of, you were a part of. And as our time, when we came in there, I was 21 in 1976. And what a time. Mm. I'll show you some pictures. But at the young, tender age of 15, I got immersed into this counter revolution. You see, I was a throwaway kid. No one gave a damn about me. The state of Texas, who was supposed to have been my guardian, they just abandoned my ass, emancipated my ass is what they did. And so here I am out on the street at the age of 15. You begin to have a different perspective because I wasn't at home. I didn't get to experience the high school experience. I didn't experience the college thing. You know, I was an entrepreneur right there from the beginning because it truly was for myself. If I didn't begin to rely on my intelligence, then chances are I may not have made it. But I not only made it, I thrived and had fun doing it. I was aware of the fact that I didn't have any parents. I didn't have any parental supervision. Hell, I didn't have any supervision at all. It was me. And most of my friends were 4 to 6 years older than I was. I was always the young kid in the room. And, you know, which I got to hang out with the adults. Why? I didn't have a bedtime. Um, so, and the thing about it was the reason why I got invited to many, and many of them were in college, which was very strange because I wasn't. But yet I attended a lot of class with my friends. Why? Well, hmm, I was selling extracurricular activity products, and I was very popular. Um, so these were lessons I got to learn. And, you know, these older friends of mine that were at the time, they were immersed in a culture that I was just at the tail end of. And so it was quite experience. I had the opportunity to had a number of friends that were getting their doctorates in PhD psychology, and it was just really cool. So, you know, I had fun. Now, there were a lot of things that, you know, when you have a more structured environment of growing up as a teenager, because I had no restrictions, and a lot of the runaways, because I was at one of the coolest places a kid my age could have been in, called Family Connection, right in the Montrose area. I've talked about it many times, know exactly my memory, how it works. I mean, I'm right there now. And I can look at the street sign and it says Indiana and Commonwealth. And there that 3-story Victorian stood. And for me, I was a permanent resident. You know, I was a ward of the state under the supervision of Harris County Child Welfare. And my caseworker, Mr. Romo, dropped me off. I think he came by maybe once or twice and then he was gone. And getting back to family connection, it was a United Way funded house, and it was a place where runaway teenagers could go. And the purpose of the house was to allow some space for the teenager and the family and then reconcile the two. And so my point was, I got to see a lot of kids going through. Mm, mm, mm. I do. Um, it was just cool because for me, I lived on the motto of if it feels good and it's not, violating someone else's peace, do it and do it well. And for me, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, about in that order too. Well, I don't know, maybe. Well, if you had the rock and roll and you had the drugs, the sex were going to come. I mean, it just was what it was and is what it is. And it was fun. It was far out. Um, Seeing the politics. Nixon was in office. Vietnam War was going. You know, the culling continued. The young vital blood. That blood has to be sacrificed to whatever this mimics are. I mean, that's what war is. It's nothing more than a sacrificial altar. And the innocent blood of our species is as a sacrifice. And why we continue to do that, I don't know. I get a chance to look back, and I think, Gilbert, you can probably say the same thing, and Mark as well. Hey, Gaia, um, that we see it, we've seen it all of our lives. And quite frankly, this sacrifice to me is coming at too high of a price. But anyway, um, if it wasn't for the music, I mean, we would have truly been a generation lost. And that was the other strange thing. There was all this chaos, this change, yet, in the midst of all that, we had some of the best music produced by our species, that created by our species. The angels can't sing to it, the demons, however your mind structure is. We created this beautiful thing known as rock and roll. Now you can say what you want. I've read, how people say, well, it's the devil's music. Listen, it saved many of us kids. I mean, I remember being in a house in an apartment that I shared with about, I think, 8 others. And there were a lot of runaways, a lot of chicks. And anyway, the thing that united us was that we realized that society had thrown us away. They didn't care. And when you have no safety net, you find out the only thing you do have is one another. Now, I learned that lesson when I was rescued from my father um, because of the torture that I endured, and then I was injected into the system. Now, the system for me wasn't that bad. I mean, the foster home sucked. I was sexually raped in that situation, but when I got into the county home, hey, it was, the one thing again, you're in this county state-run home for abused and neglected children, and you have the commonality. Didn't matter. The skin color didn't matter. My roommate, James, I've talked about him many times. I found out that he had passed on, but, we were brothers. I mean, we were blood brothers. There was just that bond. And, yeah, I look back on those memories of being in Burnett Balin. It doesn't exist now. It's gone. But it impacted so many of our life paths that were running. And it was quite interesting as I see now how these lights of life paths, how even in the most horrendous of circumstances would come together in an environment where you had a lot of bruised and broken spirits. I mean, these kids like myself were all victims of abuse. And, you know, it was quite interesting because you're in somewhat of an institutional structure, but yet it was some of the greatest lessons of life I was learning in that. So again, what would appear to be a horrendous situation actually was one of the best. I mean, when it's my time to depart here, I'm leaving with a smile, with gratitude. I mean, I got to see things and experience things that many teenagers didn't. Now, it's interesting when I look into this group, how many of us have the same type of parallel paths. Um, and particularly in that age, that time, you know, the early 70s was just a far out time. I mean, it really was. And it wasn't that the world was all that cool because it wasn't. Um, when I turned 18, that was the last year of the draft. So I turned 18 on June 19th, and the draft would always take place at, I think it was right around July. And so everyone would wait to see what their numbers. Gilbert can relate to this, and many other guys can as well. And, you know, so my number come up, and my number was like in the 290s or something. And, you know, I really wasn't worried about it. And consequently, Congress the next year did away with the draft. So, yeah, but it was that time. And again, the bond that we had was, I would say, the music. It invoked that compassion of love. And the time there wasn't a lot of love either. I got to tell you, there's more love then than it is now. But yeah, and then things really begin to get interesting as we go into, the 80s and the 90s, and we look back and you go, and you look at life paths. For myself, I have a picture, and it's so psychically impacting upon me because I know in my spirit I'm looking at my life paths, because that's the great thing we can do. Having the ability to see how this path has gotten me to where I am today, 25,000 days old. And it's amazing how sometimes the serpentine flow seems to be an ambiguous path to take, but yet in each one of those curves, as the snake is, you're learning something, you're discovering. And I was just a kid. I was a fool. I mean, I didn't know anything. But yet it was amazing how fucking smart I was. Um, Street part. I took to entrepreneurship really quick. I mean, I hung out with a group of guys that John Scott, John Klepper, Ralph, myself, and it was on the corner of Westheimer and Montrose. And every Tuesday, the Liberty News would come out, which was the underground newspaper at the time. So we would go over there. They were located right in the Montrose area. And so you could buy the paper for 15 cents and sell it for 25 cents or more. Well, that's a good return of rate almost instantly. So and we dominated that corner. That was our corner. Now, made the reason why our corner was so popular is that, you know, we were you would get a bonus with the paper. And it was just fun times. A lot of fun times. Anyway, um, hey Gilbert, how are you? Oh, interesting. I had never thought about that, how you had missed Nam. Yeah, yeah. I knew a guy, Grady, cool dude. Um, one of the things in my life, I was 16, and for a period of time, I decided that, well, I should get a job. You know, now I had a lot of other fun jobs in these, but somehow or another, I had ended up um, getting a job at 16 for a concrete company. Um, Steven Sanders, concrete construction. He did commercial jobs and he did all sorts, but I mean, his specialty um, was big warehouses, like 1 million square feet. So I get this job, and I was with a guy named Bill, and it was the first real apartment I had on my own. I used some fake ID to get to the point where they would rent me the apartment. And the cool thing about it was is that the concrete company was only like, oh, a quarter mile at the best down the road. And so here I am 16, and most of the laborers were all black. I had hair at the time, was down to here. And, I was the white dude, man. And the foremans were pretty redneck, and for me having long hair, having my hair back in a ponytail and what have you, I took a lot of fucking grief. I mean, but I had an attitude. I was stoned most of the time on LSD, so I really didn't give a fuck, to be honest with you. It was it was hard work, but I'd been used to hard work all my life, so that didn't matter to me. And it's amazing because I look back, somehow Mr. Sanders, who was the owner of this company, and he had an Eldorado, 1971, I think it was. Um, and if many of you can remember, though, the Eldorados back then, you were rich, and they had one of the first Trans Ams. But anyway, he took a liking to me, and so uh, he sent me out, made sure I went onto this one job where the concrete walls had been erected and the floors. And when you raise these concrete panel walls, which are 20 feet, um, every 6 foot, there were these styrofoam boxes that when they had poured the concrete, when it was on the ground, the concrete would cover these styrofoam inserts. And so you had to get up there with a hammer and a chisel to get them out. Well, he put me on this job, this guy named Larry, he was a foreman. And that son of a bitch was a redneck. He was a real fucking redneck. But anyway, it was cool because see, I had a fake driver's license, which allowed me to drive one of the company trucks. Uh, and as I look back, so anyway, this guy says, "Well, we got to, pop out these styrofoam pockets, so because it's where the joist would sit in." And so I shimmy my ass up on the ladder, and it's only literally it's only like 4 inches wide. And that son of a bitch takes the ladder away. And it's in a November and it's cold, and it's misting. And here I am, just holding on for dear life, knocking these things out. Didn't complain. And what I didn't know at the time was that Mr. Sanders had pulled up and was watching all this. So, you know, I can just tell you more stories like that, but it was interesting. And with most of the other guys, the black men that were there, they eventually took me under their arm. I mean, there was one guy, big dude, smoked this cigar. His name was Clarence, and everyone called him Boss. And he was the one that drove the bulldozer. And that guy was a black redneck. But boy, he took to me. He would bring me food that his wife would make. Anyway, I digress. Y'all weren't tuning in for this, but anyway, you look back on these things and it's part of the adventures. And I'm sure many of you have your own story that you could be telling on this. It's quite fascinating. And you look at all those times where, you know, you're on this journey, you're on this boat. I had the client, I've told you all this before, with this Smithsonian Institute. Anyway, Bob Decker got me to where I could get in before the public was. And, I just had to let him know the night before so he could tell the guards. And I always wanted to be in the National Gallery of Art. And I got to be in there at 5 in the morning, had like 3 hours. And there was one particular wall mural that I saw, and it was three different paintings. And it's called The Journey. And the first picture paints this newborn baby. He's on this raft. It's laden with treasures and with just wealth. Everything is very pleasant on the shores, and he's just going through. And the next picture is him in his prime, and he's fighting all these wars. Attacks coming from the shoreline that are attacking the raft. And it has a lot of esoteric meaning when you really stare at it for hours, and I did. And then the third mural that it's painted shows the raft. The man now is old. It shows that there is this golden horizon that the raft is heading towards, and the raft has been ravaged. Very few treasures are left. And I look at, and you can see it, that really is kind of what that journey is. Um, Maybe the challenge is to be able to keep those natural treasures that we well, either possessed or gifted through this journey. Um, so it's it's interesting. So I'll show you this. I'll show you. I don't know. Does anyone want to actually see? It's a great story, but hey, it's my channel, so I can do that. Right. That's right, Steiger. Um, so this was my journey. There I am. Um, Cute little guy that I am. This is at 3 months. So I am 90 days old. And I often look at this picture and I wonder the expression on my face, what's really going on back there. And it's entering, it's good, how you can awaken memories from way back then because I was a conscious being. That's me. Quite amazing. I mean, when you think about it, like, wow. Um, you know, Cute kid to say the least. That's all I got to say. And according to what I have been told, I was a happy baby. I didn't cry. Um, I would mostly laugh. Amazing how that works, how that carries through. There's my mother. In this picture here, I think I'm 6 months, maybe 9, right in that area. Um, you know, my mother still comes by. This is again me, a fat kid. I don't know about fat, but I'm gonna tell you what, I apparently was doing all right. Then we move forward in time. This is me at 5, and actually, I think this was taken in Santa Clara. Yeah, we had actually lived at one time in Benicia and then moved to Santa Clara, California. And here's me graduating, I think the first grade. Hmm. There you go. My brother and I, and still, I think I'm 5 here. Yeah. This is the house that was in Benicia. Did a whole video on this thing, but that's not here and there. This was our home in Santa Clara. Yeah. My father was a machinist, grandfather, excuse me. And yeah, very middle class. The thing is, this house, this neighborhood is also where Steve Jobs grew up. They're not too far, just about a mile away. Others as well that played a huge role in what was to become Santa Clara, Silicon Valley. My life was heading on a trajectory that, if one says that we plan our lives, then I was making sure that I was going to be at that place in history at that time to be a part of that. However, this picture is the day that this man altered my life. His decision radically impacted what I knew was supposed to be my destiny. And as a result, because of him, we were removed from this. This is my grandmother right here, and this is my father. That forever altered my life and my brother's. My brother and I have talked about this many times. Um, if he had made the right decision and had left us with our grandparents, and we called our grandmother mom, our lives would have been in the proper direction that it was meant to be, but no. So we went from a middle class to what became poverty, abject poverty. And there I am down there, my brother. Um, this house here was I think less than 600 square feet. And there were 7 adults, which eventually became 8, living in there. And again, we were poor. There's the chickens. I mean, there's a banty rooster in here that almost killed my stepbrother there. I mean, yeah, this is my dad and my brother. Again, you know, the decision that was there. Now, the whole time, I'm getting the crap beat out of me. I mean, beatings were a regular thing. So, you know, still there, you still manage to smile, and you can see I'm always the one that's cracking up. Couldn't beat it out of me. And there I am there. I look back and I go, man, was I skinny? There I am with my grandparents. And again, here I am at a Boy Scout. So, and then you look at this. So these are pictures that are of me, but every day it's being changed. There I am in my band uniform. This was Burnett Balin. Came back and visited, and it had been pretty much abandoned out here. All the children had been moved out. I had to get permission on there, but yeah, that was one of the cottages I actually stayed in. That was Miss Hazel's cottage. Let me tell you about Miss Hazel. Mm-mm-mm. So the first day, my case worker brought me into Burnett Balin. Um, I was assigned cottage 1 with Mrs. Beard, and nice lady. She was a divorced woman, had her son, which was the same age I was. I think I was at that point 12, 13. And uh, this kid, now you have to understand, I'm not sure what I'm walking into. Each cottage could sleep 24 children. And each one that you probably can't see in the corner, there's a room. So each room had 2 children in it. Well, so I get there like about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So all the kids are all off to school, except for Mrs. Beard's son. And so I'm walking out in the dining room, and the dining room was seated enough where it could actually seat 30 people. And there was this guy, Mr. Cuellar, who was, the athletic director, and also he was the cottage parent in cottage 2. So we're standing there, right? I'm standing there, and this kid standing there. So somehow or another, Mr. Cuellar opens up his wallet to give Mrs. Beard some money for something. And this kid, I'm watching this, does as fast as you can blink of an eye, faster than a blink of an eye, reached in, pulled out a $20 bill, and managed to put it in his pocket with neither adult realizing what happened. And then he gives me later part of that. And he says, well, you didn't say, you didn't rat me out. And I said, well, I look back now, I was in shock that no one saw it. But anyway, 1,000 stories lived in this place. Miss Hazel, getting back to her, she was cottage 3. And I walked out when I had first day there, and the kids have gotten back from the school. She had all of her children out walking the perimeter of this cottage, making them do duck squats. And she's had this paddle, and she says, you're not quacking hard enough. I was warned by every kid, you don't want to end up there. Guess what? I ended up there. So this is my cousin's. This is out in California. And, I look at this, and I was pretty messed up at this point. It happens, and you can almost see it. I knew where I wanted to go, and I knew it wasn't where I was at. And this is one of those pictures that I remember when it was taken, because there was some profound changes about to go. And as you can see, I'm still a skinny kid, but this is one of the few pictures of me with long hair. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Some stories I could tell on this one. And so then, as I continue to go, this one always brings back memories. I was a part of that. In fact, where this is taking place, David and I are somewhere right in this area here. What a concert. Wow. Bad Company, ZZ Top. Yeah, it was. So advance a little bit further. I live now up in St. Louis. Had gone out to California to get my journeyman card. I just found out I had a natural knack as a drywall finisher and got my journeyman card. And I was the foreman on this job. This is Anheuser-Busch. We were building their executive building. This was the helipad in which August Bush III would come, in which I got to know him. More pictures back in the day. Then advanced, this is about like 8-9 years later. This is me. I was president of the ad club. I was in a regional meeting, and we were putting on a play. This is actually the streak. And yeah, I did fill it out pretty well. That was a lot of fun. But then this is me in the 90s. And this was a woman who I knew. Yeah, I hung around. I think this was like a ball we had went to, or maybe it may have been a Christmas party. But there you go. There's yours truly. This is when I lived in Knoxville. It's my cousin. This was on the convention. As you can see, this is a family reunion. All these folks are now gone. All of them. All of them. Children, a lot of them do. They're gone. This is me with my cousin. Lots of stories there. This is me. This is the cousins that I grew up with. And we were all within 4 years of each other for the most part. Yeah. So you can see, this is my uncle. This is my brother. I lived in Austin as the CEO of a software tech company. This is me and my vice president of operations in New York City, where we were having. This is yours truly. I think I'm in Vegas here, but anyway, I was feeling no pain, and this is where I was up at Harvard, and they're about to introduce me. We actually won an award, an industry award on my technology. There I am. And this is my wife. and I. This is when we were in Washington, D.C. Uh, Another picture. Again, all the changes, Red Rocks, Steely Dan, going in for knee surgery, Washington, D.C. My other brother. And finally, we were guest, and if you can see, one of my favorite guys in the world, Dennis Miller, and everybody else knows Mr. Bill O'Reilly. And there's my lovely wife, and that is that picture that you see. So, what a ride, as I say. It has been quite the ride, and I've enjoyed it. Looking forward to writing some more and writing some more. Um, Mark says the family looks awesome. Yeah, good family. Had a reunion. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it amazing when you do actually get with, family? I mean, I grew up with my cousins and Marilyn was at Woodstock and had come back, and I still remember it was Thanksgiving, and um, it was her, Marsha. So the four of them are dropping Orange Sunshine. And Janine and I, we realized something's up, because they're acting really weird. But yeah, it was Marilyn who really came to come back and turned on all the cousins. And sadly, Marilyn lost her life. Her and her boyfriend, husband, moved up to Alaska, and she was unfortunately hit by a train. So yeah. Well, thank you, Mark. Yeah. Uh, how are you lost? I'm not sure, Bonnie. Was that my life call would be a little rougher than yeah. So anyway, hey, this is what a family does. We share it, and well, many of you have been with me since I started this, and so why not? I mean, you know, I could get out the resume on but you can go check that out on LinkedIn. And it's been fun. I've met two presidents before they were president. Met Donald Trump the weekend. It was actually on that Friday when the Taj Mahal was opening to the public. And we were up there to do this convention at the Taj Mahal. So I am getting checked in, and like, it's like not a lot of people are there, a lot of people cleaning up and what have you. And so I get on to the elevator, and I was like on the ninth or 10th floor. And the elevator went up to the second level, mezzanine, and this dude gets in. Now I had read the art of the deal, and here is Donald Trump. He's on the elevator, and the elevator closes, and he looks over and he says, um, what do you think of the property? And I said, well, I just got here. I don't know. And he says, well, where are you going? And, it's on the ninth floor. And he says, well, here, let me show you what we got here. And seriously, the dude walks down the hall, you know, put the little key, the slot thing in, and and he's real proud of the bathroom. And I agree. I mean, it was opulent. That's the only thing I can say. That's what I told him. Anyway, that was my story. And then I was going up to a venture capital tech conference in Dallas, and we were presenting. And so I get in the elevator, and because I'm on the bottom level of this parking garage, so we get up to the level where you get out in the first floor of the garage, and the elevator opens, and there's two Texas highway patrolmen, one Texas Ranger, and the governor, George W. Bush. And he gets in, and it's getting crowded. I mean, there are like six of us in here. I had my business associate with me, and he says, what do you, he said, how you doing? And I said, fine, we're actually presenting here. And he says, and in his drawl, he says, well, that's really good. He says, what are you doing? And I told him about uh, the software, the integration, what we need. He said, that sounds really good and really exciting. He says, pleasure to meet because we got out on the same floor. So anyway, that's all I can say. Been fun. A lot of um, a lot of good times in the video industry. I have to say that was some pretty cool shit. I mean, it really was. Because of my background I started out, as you can see, basically private entrepreneurship. Um, you know, a lot of odd jobs when I first there, but I became an entrepreneur. I knew how to do the money thing. And if you got a product that people like, and particularly if your product is limited, people will buy it and they'll also pay a good price for it. But anyway, learning that and then, learning a trade. My finger to this very day is still twisted because holding that knife, but I got good at it, but I got bored at it. And it was during the time I was, in the commercial work that this thought came to me. Video. Wasn't even sure what exactly video was. This is how things work in my life. So I did side jobs, you know. If a person's house needed to be drywalled, I had a friend that was a hanger and they would hang it and I would come in and do the taping. And so I get this call and it's my friend, and he says, "Hey, I got a really nice, sweet gig. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah." So he had contracted out, and it was for Warner Communications. Cable wasn't around then. It was microwaved in the early days of cable. So I get this job to do the drywall finishing and the painting. You know what it was? A studio, a video studio. It was for Warner Communications where they were putting their main production facility for video. So the vice president, I still remember her, and what an absolutely wonderful individual. Her name was Cindy, and she was the vice president of Warner Communications as they were building. They were going to be building out in St. Louis this whole uh, cable. And I made a deal with her. I said, listen, I won't charge you anything for the work that I'll be doing, but in exchange, I want you to teach me how this all works. She did. And within 2 months, I had an understanding of what video was. Understood how to work a switcher, understood how to work a editing board. And from there, I made the bold ass move to quit my job, and I decided what St. Louis needed was a production center. Millions of dollars. You know what? You sometimes have to fake it until you can walk it, till you can make it. And anyway, there you go. That's another part. But so, finishing out the thought on that, it was because of the video going through production, post-production, high-end computer animation, CGI, the whole bit, to actually duplication, fulfillment, packaging. And from there, being the president of the International Television Association, as well as the president of the American Advertising Federation, the chapter, I get introduced to a cat whose father was Felix Calaveras, who was into NASCAR. And he was associated with a company called Creative Sports that was acquired by then the emerging up-and-coming sports cable company called ESPN. From there, we started our own company doing the marketing for raising corporate funds for the racing teams. Richard Petty, Kyle Petty, the late Davey Allison. We worked for Steve Grissom, a number of the teams. We raised millions and millions of dollars of corporate sponsorship, and we brought in Maryland Bank of North America, Visa, MasterCard into the sports marketing industry, which in this case was NASCAR. And from NASCAR, that then led me into introductions to computer programming. And the rest of it is history. So there you go. And what a freaking ride. Yeah. Yep, indeed. Learning, went out to California, this brilliant guy. I mean, he was a brilliant fucking genius. He was a little off, but Randy, I won't give his last name, this guy, oh, he was far out in so many ways. He was eccentric. So um we're figuring out how we can approach one of the largest insurance companies, Kaiser, and I was bold enough to say, well, we were working at two things. We were looking at how to capture data by using long distance cards, because in those days, long distance was really expect. So we got to know a guy who owned a telecom company. Anyway, from the telecom company, I began to get interested in database management because we spoke with this Kaiser in figuring out how to do fulfillment. I knew fulfillment, but I had to figure out how to begin to understand database management, and more importantly, how to begin to build the databases. And Randy, this brilliant guy who had been a pioneer in computer languaging and machine logic, sat me down, and for like 2 weeks, every evening, he would come over, bring over this whiteboard, and taught me how to, number one, how disk management works and how much space you can have, and then particularly what type of language to begin to associate the data into different data silos. And that led then to going to Austin, becoming the CEO of a new startup company that was in the early days of the internet. That led me to be invited to Beaver Creek for an executive mind share that just so happened to be there was Jeff Bezos, Meg Ryan, all of these movers and shakers in the industry. And here I was with them on these same panels. And yeah. What can I say? So, so Wayne, I watched your biography. I guess that's what it was in a slow way. So thank you for uh, probably an hour. You could have probably spent somewhere else, but it's been fun. That's just a small snippet, but it's interesting how everything connects. And that thing, getting back with my father on that fateful day, that where he completely upended my life. It's amazing. It took decades, but eventually I still ended up where I most likely would have been close to begin with. So it would appear that there was a fate tied to a destiny that was still going to intersect into that industry. And subsequently, since then, I was part of the team that invented the first pay at the table in an enterprise level, dealing primarily in the hospitality industry, in this case, Aloha and Micros. And I am the inventor of the very first mobile payment system in the world, dealing specifically with nonprofits and churches. That's what I designed this system to do. It was fully integrated with the IRS, et cetera, et cetera. Ta-ta! So anyway, there we go. And who knows what's next? A lot of ideas, and this one's been a lot of fun, I have to say. You know, learning a lot. I mean, I don't know what better path of life that one could have is the ability to have the opportunity to learn. Yeah. So, okay. Um, I appreciate all of you. Thank you again for this Friday. Be good. Enjoy the weekend. I'll see y'all on Monday. We're going to pick up where we left off on the mimics. Met a few of those. Many of you can too. Thank you, Allison. Uh, so that's what I've been able to do in 25,000 days. Now, if I have another 25,000, I can only imagine what can be done. So, um, whew. All right. Hey, Raven, what's up, girl? Good to see you. Linda Espinoza. I just love that. Linda Espinoza. What a beautiful name. Well, anyway, Mary wins. Thank you, darling. John Price. Hey, Brandon, good to see you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. Jackie, much love to y'all. And thank you all for adding to that journey. You all have, and because I can do the second part of this, and then that would be going back in the last 10 years of doing this and the journey. Wow. I mean, I just gave you one part of it. There's this other whole decade now that I look back and I go, whoa, I've learned more in this last decade than I did in all the previous decades. And I got to meet y'all, got to get to know you. And yeah, so, hey, voiceover, thank you. So, when I hit 69, that'll be in June. We'll just say party on, right? So thank you all. I'll see you again, Nina. Make sure to tune in, Nina. She's got Writer Leave, Raised by Giants, on her Sin Day show. So definitely check that out. I'll be perusing by there myself. So thank you, Truman. Appreciate it, Lady Ailing. So yeah. Brandon, I think we'll make that happen one day. I really do. Elderberry, thank you, buddy, and Laura, and all the rest of you. So, Joe Mac, right back at you.